All right. What's going on, guys? We apologize for keeping you holding tonight. We were trying to actually get this interview for you here so you guys can hear what was going on. We have Lee Arthur Rice with us tonight on the All Rights Matter show on Anon Radio Live. I'm your host, Sincere. It's going to be a great interview tonight. Lee Arthur Rice has been with us before, and he's coming back because he has some great information here. He actually is a reporter himself, so he went out and did an interview at the Idaho State Bar there, and he was able to get some great information. It's a 12.5 minute long interview. I'm going to let you hear it now.
News. He's a reporter, and he has some questions about licensing of attorneys. So I'm not sure if you wanted to speak with him. Okay, all right. Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay. So I just spoke with Diane. If you want to have a seat.
And that would be Diane
Minnick.
Minnick? Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi. Diane? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, Diane Minnick.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Diane. Lee Rice.
Hi, nice to meet you. Want to sit down for a second?
Sure.
TBOI, where is that?
It's online. It's an online presence.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I was just curious because they talk of having a license to practice law.
Right.
And so I'm looking to investigate that aspect because they say when you go in court, for example, the judge and the prosecutor sometimes, and even the attorney that is the defense attorney or the public defender, right? It seems like they all play by certain rules that are just, I don't know, like unionized, for lack of a better term. Because someone like myself to go in, there's always a threat to say that you're practicing law without a license. So that caused one to know that when there's a business, right, whether with the state, that you can go to this, you're told to go to the Secretary of State's office and you
register.
File.
Right.
So
Right.
Inquiring about a license to practice law, which you're threatened with in court, right? Which the judge will do that if you for those.
If you're representing yourself, it's not an issue. It's only if you try to represent someone else. If you want to represent yourself in court, you have every right to do so.
Well, but then there's also the terms that are being used.
Well, there's a court
You're saying
rules.
represent. No, but there's represent versus Sixth Amendment violation, right? Which is it doesn't say represent. It's assistance of counsel, and it can be of anyone's choice. And if someone doesn't want to be a member or have a member of the bar, right, being their assistance of counsel, which is their choice, Sixth Amendment, correct?
I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know the answer to that.
I don't think.
So anyway, when I go to the state, they say there's no such thing. We don't do that. Right. And they say, you've got to come over here because, so obviously you guys you're the licensing
entity.
Okay, and by what authority does that come from?
Supreme Court, Idaho Supreme Court. We license lawyers under rules of the Idaho Supreme Court.
Okay, so the Supreme Court is the boss.
They actually issue the licenses. We do not.
Ah, so I should be speaking to someone there. with regards to that whole licensing aspect?
They delegate that, the regulatory administration of that regulation to
So-
us, but the actual licenses and the rules that govern how licensing works, which are in our desk book, you can look them up online.
Okay, so do you have like a charter or something, I guess? Is that?
Those are the rules. They're Idaho Supreme Court rules. They're not a charter, so they're rules of the court. And the rules
Okay,
of the
so-
court are what govern how lawyers are licensed, and the court are those that can issue licenses, and the court is who can discipline lawyers. We don't directly do that. That's under the authority of the court.
Okay. So is this?
the
is this
rules
a bit?
of the
What sort
court
of
are like
business is
some of the
this then?
things that you're talking about in terms of the rules of courts. Like when you go to court, those are generally court rules, as are ours. Different set, but there's rules of civil procedure.
Okay, but
rules
all of
that
you guys are
govern-
considered that being so all attorneys are here, and then you've got like the judges, and so all of this considered like officers of the court. Is that correct?
Lawyers are considered officers of the court.
Okay, so their first obligation is there. So how does one? Because I think there's an issue with public defenders going on right now. Actually, there is a big case. I don't know.
The issue with
that's
public
another side.
defenders is,
And they're- but
legislative
they're-
issue in terms of funding of public defenders, and
But they still have to be here, right, as members, correct? They had to
they
get
have to
their
be
license.
licensed by the Idaho State Bar. Yes,
Okay, so that had to come through here as well.
not the issue of that they're dealing with the legislature is not our issue. The issue is
But
public
the-
defenders
but
still
the-
have to be licensed by the Idaho State Bar.
Okay,
Yes,
so how? So isn't that already a conflict of interest?
I don't understand why.
Well, if it's the court, correct? The obligation is there because you're officers of the court. How then can even those public defenders actually be
The officers of
the
the
citizen
court.
council? There's a conflict there. Because can one address the constitutional issues there that lies with that?
That would require going to the court. I mean, in order to address the constitutional issue, then you have to file something with a court to. I mean,
Okay.
constitutional issues are determined by Supreme Courts, not by us individually. So if there's somebody thinks that there's a violation of the Constitution, they file something with the Supreme Court.
Okay, so just one more question. With regards to the codes that are copywritten, okay, those are the things that, as a member of the bar, you guys have these codes that you,
We don't copyright anything.
pardon?
We don't copyright anything.
But the things that you enforce, so you guys are like the attorneys are like the enforcement arm of this whole process, correct?
Okay. Well, I don't understand the copyright question.
Well, with the codes that
They're not. Those codes they're public record. You can go look them up and see what they say. Nothing's copyrighted in that sense. I mean, anything you want to know about the rules of the court or rules would be through the court. They have a website, and we have rules of the bar that are court rules, and those are also published, but they're not copyrighted in any way.
So excuse me. So is this agency you're saying? Right? Is this like a nonprofit agency? Are you guys?
We are an
Is
entity.
it a
We
profit?
are a
or what's the
self-governing.
deal?
We're a self-governing state agency.
Self-governing.
State agency.
So you're not
By
really
statute.
then. So the Supreme Court has nothing to do with you guys. You're self-governing, right?
No, if you look at our statute, there's two statutes, one self-governing and one that's the Board of Commissioners, and it says we will operate under rules of the Idaho Supreme Court. The statute actually says that.
Okay. And okay.
Does that make sense?
Not really, but I'm trying to wrap my.
Yeah, I don't
It
understand.
sounds like we
The
got to go
Sixth
around in
Amendment about
circles here.
assistance of
But that's
counsel,
okay.
you have to go ask the court about how that plays out.
Okay,
in
but the
court.
licensing aspect, okay.
We are the license, we do the licensing aspects of the regulation through rules of the Supreme Court.
Okay, and so for one to be licensed, then it has to come by.
Well, there's rules that you have to be admitted by taking the bar exam or taking the bar
And-
exam somewhere else. That whole process, the admissions process, that's something we do also. And then the
So-
court admits people, and then we license them yearly after that.
So there's a
It's a
whole
whole
process
process.
of it. So
Yes.
you handle
That
this.
process, yeah.
Okay.
So
As
you can
the
look
law
at those are
foundation.
admissions rules, and that's how you become a licensed by the bar, become a licensed lawyer, and every state has them. This is not unique to Idaho.
Right. Okay.
Every state has an admissions process in terms of how you are admitted to the bar, and then a licensing process. don't think
But
there's
that's
any
all through
state.
the Supreme Court, though.
In every state, either directly or indirectly through the Supreme Court, yes.
Interesting.
Any given Supreme, yeah, every
Do you
state.
have a cop? Do you have a license? Can I see one that you issue?
We don't-
just like,
It's just a little card, it's not a license, I mean, it's not like that.
so
not
it's like a membership then?
Well, no, it's a card and it says, but it's not like your driver's license.
It's not. Why not?
If somebody calls, then we'll tell them whether they're licensed. You can look online to see if somebody's licensed. I mean, you can find that information out, but it's not
Okay.
like, because any given day, I mean, somebody can be licensed or they can move out of state and decide they don't want their license. So it's not like the driver's license where it's good for a year. It's like once you're licensed, you can change that licensing status throughout the year. The card's not going to tell you anything unless we reissue the cards every time. So
Right.
you would just check with us to see, are they still licensed? Are they, and we have to keep those records up and then provide those to the court.
But there's no charter, and as an agency, I mean, so is it separate agency? Is it an agency that's associated? Like, is there a contract between this agency and the Supreme Court, or how does that work?
The rules basically the rules govern what we do. So the contract wouldn't be. There's a set of Supreme Court rules that say this is how the process is going to work. We implement that process. I mean, I can show you what I'm talking about. You can look them up online.
So is this something that you guys have published here?
It's
or
all
is that
online.
All of this?
All of it. Yeah, everything.
Do you have
that's in
hard
here,
copies available?
Yeah, I think you can buy one. I think we still have one. We're about to put a new one out. I don't know if I buy this one because we're getting a new one will be available like in 2 weeks. But you can. So Idaho Bar Commission rules.
Okay.
And basically right here, it's superintendent, it's subject to the Supreme Code, the board, and these are as promulgated by the Board of Commissions and adopted by the Supreme Court. So that's the rules that govern what we do.
Okay.
And then it's.
So the state of Idaho pay you guys?
No, we have any money from the state. We're self-funded through licensing fees that lawyers pay. And then there's another set of rules that are the rules of professional conduct, which governs.
So what, is there a chance, do you have, like, you have this old one?
Well, let me see if they've got them still, because if they do, you can buy one, I think, or buy one, I don't know if they. Do you have any, like, desk books left? Not any? Yeah, no, you want a desk book. Yeah, all of that, if you go, it says desk book right on our website, you can look up any of that, all of that information is there. Everything that's in there, other than the roster itself, which we don't publish online as aggregate. But all of the other rules, if you, on the front page of our website, it'll say desk book. If you click there, all that information is available, including the rules. Okay?
And I don't have any card for this one, but this is my other
Okay.
card.
Okay.
All right, thanks, appreciate it,
welcome.
thank you. The end, or is this the beginning?
For some reason, through my Firefox and Google, I'm not able to actually play it through my Facebook. So we're going to get that to you, though, guys. A little bit later on, I'm going to help Lee out with that. And we're going to edit that into the show when we put it on YouTube later on. But Lee, are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good. Listen, that interview that you did, it was a very interesting and intriguing interview. I listened to the full, I believe it was 12 minutes and 32 seconds or something like that. But I listened to the thing all the way through because that was a good interview. Can you tell us a little bit about it, who you interviewed and the purpose of the interview?
Yes, it was at the Idaho State, and what I'll say first is that I was talking with a friend of mine, Dale, who's another excellent researcher, and we were speaking, and from the conversation, I decided, well, I'm out in town, I might as well just go there now and see what would happen. So I went to the Idaho State Bar Association. It also is listed as the Idaho Law Foundation as well. Anyway, I got there, and I ended up speaking with Diane Minnick. She's the executive director there.
Okay.
The receptionist actually called her, and she came down and spoke with me. So what I wanted to find out firsthand was this whole business of a license to practice law. And the interview went with regards to having had some firsthand experience with the courts and being the courts in that capacity. So I wanted her to know that not only was I there in a capacity with TVI News, doing some investigative journalism there, also the fact that personally I have actually have reason for wanting to get to the truth, to find out what's true here. And so we engaged in the conversation. She was very cordial, but I explained to her that, the guys like us that go into these courts, and if we're there, say in the capacity of assisting a friend as next friend, which I have been in court as a next friend. I've also had a layman, which would be like assistant in court. So I said, in doing this, the judges generally threaten you with jail time or some sort of charge, and that charge would be practicing law without a license. And so I was on a mission to find out exactly how you go about getting this so-called license, because I was told, and I have the understanding that when you go, that any and all business and any and all licenses are licensed through the Secretary of State's office, and which, they handle all of the business registrations, the voter registration, they're the actual the state's official record keeper. So there's quite a bit that the Secretary of State handles, and businesses are one of them. And so when I went to get my promoter's license, because I was involved a while back with the Ultimate Fighting, the mixed martial arts, and you're required to have a promoter's license. So while I was there at that state office, I inquired about getting a license to practice law, and they looked at me like I had a third eye. And it was just one of those things where, Mr. Rice, we don't do that here. And I'm saying, well, I gave them an explanation. I said, when I go to court, this is what they're saying. So, I know that the state issues license, for just about everything, whether it's doing nails, hair, whatever, any sort of business, that's what the state does. And so that's why I'm here. Well, they pointed me to the direction of the Idaho Bar, and I hadn't gone in there until yesterday, or a couple of days ago, actually. And that's what the conversation sort of went from there. But she was telling me that the licensing aspect actually comes down through the Supreme Court. And so I asked if I could actually see a license at one point, and she said, well, we don't really have, she didn't have one to show me. So I questioned whether it was a license or if it was just a membership to a union. She admitted that all attorneys have to go through this process, being having a license, and she kept referring to it as a license to practice law, and that it was issued through them via the Supreme Court. So I said, well, should I be speaking to somebody at the Supreme Court level then? And she didn't really want to go there either. But it was somewhat confusing, because on one hand she's saying that the licensing entity, but at the same time she's saying it has to be approved through the Supreme Court, and it's the same process in all of the states.
Well, what intrigued me the most about the whole interview was her admission of being a self-governing body.
Yes, that's it. She actually,
to me,
admitted.
She literally said that, and to me, that was the most groundbreaking part of the interview. And you pounced on it. You went into it, and kind of, what do you mean by that? And you were going over the differences of, I believe it was whether it was like a set of rules or something like that they had to follow, and she was saying how they were, being compliant with the state pretty much, but that they were separate from that and that they were self-governed. It was very strange.
Yeah, and in a sense, it was somewhat confusing too, because she asked if I understood, and I basically said no.
Yeah, you did. You were like, no.
No, but it was the other part that I found interesting was that the admission of the fact that they're officers of the court.
Well, I want to before you go there, I want to say something else too about that.
Okay.
To me, I don't think she understood. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that you were kind of drawing a point. It was maybe a couple different points, but I think in the directions that you were leading her with the questioning, I think she started looking at it like maybe it is weird. Like why is it positioned this way? Why is the hierarchy this way? Her voice didn't sound very confident in the explanation of what she was saying.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you there. There was a point where it did seem that way, and
Okay.
this was just sort of, I just walked in on this. There wasn't anything organized, and
Yeah.
I should have probably been a lot more organized, but I was really surprised I was able to be able to speak with someone that soon. And so
Yeah, you just
so
literally
with
walked
on the
in
cuff
from
there, just
the receptionist, and you had, for people that didn't get a chance to hear the interview, they don't know. You walked in and literally, from the receptionist on, it was very interesting. I mean, you asked from the receptionist, she made it happen. You went right in.
yes, yeah, and so I should have been better prepared myself, However, I believe that we did get enough information that would, definitely it's worth a second interview, and so I'm going to be seeing if I can't organize that as well, just as a follow-up,
Well,
just to get further clarification. We'll put it that way.
Well, what was that second part that you were saying saying that stood out to you?
Well, the fact that we've known and we've read in case law and things like that, their case law, that they're officers of the courts, the judges, the attorneys, and whether it's a paid attorney or whether it's a public defender, or they all go through this process. They are all members of a state bar, and this would be in every state. And so I question that, because especially with the public defenders, it's like, so how is it that these attorneys can take money, or, she used the term represent, and that was another thing I wanted to bring to her attention too. But it's how can they do that? I pointed out that it's a conflict of interest, and she said she didn't see it that way.
Yeah, that was very interesting. You did point that out, and it was a very good point too. It's a very, to me, if we were talking about business or something like that, or the fact of, when you go to get an attorney to go against the state, and if they work for the state, conflict of interest, they can't do it. If it was a case like that, it's clear cut, but you gave her a clear cut case that's kind of in reverse, and it's just like she didn't see it whatsoever. And it was kind of strange because you were right on about that. It's a direct conflict of interest.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's a scam.
From the code enforcer or the police officer that brings you in, based on his enforcement of their statutes and codes, to the judge and everyone. Everybody's part of that process. There's monies too, as I understand it, that's made off of these cases, and haven't researched that enough. My friend Michael James, may he rest in peace, my mentor and all, an associate, he had a friend that we were able to look up the case number on Fidelity, and they've changed that whole process now. But he had sorted that out somehow, and we were able to track actual court cases, because we know that there's monies that's made off of those cases, and some of those money go to the judge's retirement fund. And no doubt the attorneys play a big part in that. And we see that on a regular basis, and how sometimes the judge may even assist the prosecutor,
So that
I've witnessed that in court.
So that would tie in to like a kind of a for-profit system based off of the tax dollars in a way.
Well, yeah, and the thing of it is how, and I did ask her too. I mentioned that it's a union. That organization. When you think about it, how is it that the Bar Association can actually be in business as such, right? And as a monopoly, because it is a monopoly.
Yeah, it's exclusive.
If you can't afford one, we'll get one for you. Well, it's still the same party.
Yeah,
They're still part of the same group, and that's in direct violation of the Taft-Hartley Act. I didn't actually ask on that, but that
what
might
was the
be
name of
something I
that
looked
act
at.
again? Can you say the name of that again?
The Taft-Hartley Act.
Okay, and what does that state?
Well, it has to do briefly, and I'm paraphrasing. It has to do that it's a closed shop union, and it's not to be allowed, especially with dealing with the public. I mean, look at the large monopolies like the phone companies and other media that all of a sudden got broken up, so to speak. It wasn't allowed by the government, but yet and still you have the Bar Association that's been around for years, since the early 1800s, I believe.
And has never been challenged, has never had a competitor, and they set all the rules, the standards. It's inclusive, inclusive and exclusive, and
yeah,
it's separate from the people, and it's separate. Obviously, in the interview, as she was saying, it's a self-governing body, and it's separate from the government. So what is it?
So there's need for further clarification with regards to that. And, the other matter was aside from the conflict of interest, there is no separation of powers, because as a member of the bar associations, it totally goes against the original 13th Amendment. I was looking and at the War of 1812. And in 1814 was when they set fire to D.C., where records were destroyed, where the French came in and the British, and that fire that took place. And it is believed that that's where the 13th Amendment and other documents, got destroyed. Because if you consider the original 13th Amendment, it didn't allow for titles and of nobility, and that's exactly what we have. And they're in every branch of government, the legislature, the executive branch, judicial branch. So not only is there no separation of powers, but there's always this, they meet in chambers, the public defender or the defense attorney, the prosecutor, and the judge, they always meet in chambers, and it's always outside the purview of the victim. There you have the ex parte communication. So
man,
all of these
I
things
love your position on this, brother. I can't even lie to you. Your position on how you're presenting the information is it's intriguing, man. It really is, because it shows the flaws in the quote unquote legal system. It shows how illegal things really are, that the rules only apply to the American public and not those who actually enforce and implement the rules.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and that's what's wrong with the system. And those of us that have been pretty active in the court, we used to go in and say you're charged with a seatbelt violation, so-called, and we were going in and arguing the fact of the seat that charge, and then we got to thinking about that, and we said, well, wait a minute, legally, they're right, legally, because they created that, they can do what they will. But how does that really apply lawfully to you or I? It isn't. Not unless you belong to that particular, I guess, society, I guess would be a way to put that. Because it is closed. The codes that they use, I mean, this Diane had mentioned that there's nothing copywritten. Well, the U.S. Code, and I know the Idaho statutes and codes, it's at the very bottom of the page. It talks about being copywritten. So they change these, they create these things, and
I wanted to. When I heard you talking in that part of the interview, and that was in the beginning, about it actually being copywritten, and she was saying, no, it's not. I wanted to jump in so bad. Like, I really wanted to jump in the interview, but like, that's not true. Because I saw a case of that, I believe it was last year, and I believe it was in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, where there was a problem with somebody that had taken a piece of the code that you have to, I guess, get from, the actual government, actually from the state, and had copied and pasted it somewhere, or had posted it online somewhere. And there was some kind of case that was derived out of that because of the copyright laws. And it was a case that was, I never saw anything else about it again, but I want to find it again, because that was the problem. People were saying, well, how could it be public law? How could you copyright a public law and then charge somebody with it for sharing it?
Right, and that's exactly what they do. I mean, it's like we can't really, it is theirs. And, we're forced to have to deal with that when we go into court. It definitely has nothing to do with common law. Although in Idaho, there's a code. It's I'm trying to think of 73-116 here in Idaho, and I'm sure that other states are similarly situated. And it states very clearly that common law is enforced, and it says construction of statutes, right? But yet, still, these attorneys want to say, no, the statutes have supplanted the common law. And it's like, well, wait a minute. No, this is very clear. I don't need you to explain to me, because it says right here, common law enforced.
Yeah.
And it's construction of statutes. And the evidence of their case law is the evidence of their case law that proves that common law is enforced.
So
the way they coming up with their case law. So that is the evidence of it right there.
So at the end of the day, would you assert that they're willingly subverting the fact that they should be following common law?
Yeah, they are, without a doubt. Actually, there's...
because they're not dumb individuals. They're not, these people have gone to school for many years, and I'm sure they know exactly what they're talking about. So, I believe you. I believe this is something that they actually already know.
Well, one, I found out that they don't even really teach much on the Constitution, and it is all about concepts and theories that they work with when they're going through their school. Then when they graduate, then it's like, you've got to get this massive book collection of all the codes, right? So that's the furthest thing from common law.
Yeah, no, it's so it's pretty much you're studying their system.
You're forced to look at that to use their rules and regulations, because they don't even follow their own rules and regulations, these attorneys. I'm witnessing now a case whereby it was a collecting case where there wasn't any contract. And we believe after 4 years now that the judge has finally realized that the attorneys were lying to him with regards to what they actually had. And so in that process, we've called one of the witnesses, and turns out this witness is going to be coming in on our behalf, but he's also a friend of the judge. And so the judge, I believe, has used that as an excuse to recuse himself. But we know that he also knows that there is no contract, and he should have dealt with this matter, rather than we're going into the fourth year. It should have been dealt with in the very beginning, because it was in the paperwork.
Do you find?
But the lawyers, they write their paperwork in such a way that it's actually confusing. There's just so much clutter in the way they write, which it's unnecessary. Common law is pretty straightforward.
Exactly. Exactly. It's straightforward, and I believe it's meant, it's written in this fancy, what they would call legalese, I guess, to confuse
Yeah.
people. And a lot of folks that read this stuff, and if you don't deal with it on a daily basis, it is very easy to get one paragraph in and not know what you read.
Oh yeah, yeah. And for me, like in reading it, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. And it's really a discipline, and it really shouldn't be that way when we're talking about just common laws. It should be straightforward, easy to understand, not a whole lot of clutter. Common means the average man can understand. And when you talk about the language that the legal system, especially, considering the bar, what they provide, it is not common language. It is not something that common people can understand. It's all legal talk, and at the end of the day, when you copyright that legal talk and then say that you're a self-governing body, that creates a scary scenario of letting you know where they stand as far as prosecution is concerned. As far as anything is concerned, it's almost like they're untouchable.
Well, yeah, and so the odds are stacked against you from the very outset. You have a situation where you have the state, or in the case of the political prisoners, between the Bundy situation and out in Oregon as well, whereby you're forced to actually have an attorney, and to me that's just a controlled aspect, because they can't have the truth being out there, and so the attorneys seem they're being used to kind of keep that whole situation controlled. And the fact of the matter is that once you take on an attorney, you're actually considered a ward of the state. That you don't know, you have no clue. In other words.
Mm-hmm.
And it represents you, and that terminology. And I did raise that issue with Diane as well, and she, because she kept saying represents, and I said, well, it doesn't say that in the Constitution. It's assistance of counsel, and that's of your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so if one decides not to associate with the First Amendment with a member of a bar, which is a closed union shop aspect, then that is that person's right.
Didn't you bring up something regarding the Sixth Amendment? It was another amendment that you had brought up to her regarding that. What was it?
Sorry, I kind of cut out here.
I said it was another amendment that you brought up to her regarding that. Do you remember what it was?
Well, it was a 6th, which was the assistance of counsel. And
Okay.
I believe I also mentioned the 7th would have been, with regards to the rules. The court should operate according to the rules of common law, and that's actually in the 7th Amendment, where it states that. But the representation aspect is what they use, and I think it was based on a case, Gideon or something like that, I believe, whereby they use that terminology, but you don't find that anywhere in any of the founding documents. And then if you do a word study with regards to represent, that says it all too. Representation is not what you want, because they actually do what they want. So they don't really represent you.
Yeah. Somebody's someone's interests are being represented. It's just not yours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So the representation is there, but it's definitely a sick, twisted, perverted form of representation, because it is definitely not in your favor. It is a system that they have managed to garnish a lot of control and influence over time, and it's funny how things just morph into that. And when you have an inclusive system like that, with the judges and the lawyers and the prosecutors and the public defenders, it it's really, really, I mean, and these guys are all friends and hang out together and, work under the same standards. It's really hard when you're a victim or anything like that, or, of a crime, either if you're a victim of a crime or if you're somebody that's being unrightfully charged by the government. You're just in a really bad position because you're dealing with something that you just don't know what it is. And I believe that 90%, and I don't believe I'm exaggerating when I say this, 90% of people that walk into a courtroom have no idea what's going on. They just want to get it over with, get done, and pay their fine and walk out the door.
Sure. And you're exactly right. They don't have the time, for one. They make it to where it's really difficult that way. So most just, they can't take time off from work. And then there is a certain amount of, if you choose to fight it, then you also run the risk of going to jail.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
so
tell
that's the other aspect.
I can tell you firsthand a situation that I was involved in, and was dealing with my license back in like 2006 or 7 or something like that. And I remember I was living in the hood at the time, and I didn't have a lot of money or anything like that, so I had gotten some trouble. I got pulled over, so I said, okay, I went to court for it, and I told the judge, I said, look, try to get myself some counsel or whatever. I was trying to get myself into a financial position to do that. I didn't want to utilize the public defender because, my ignorance at the time, I didn't realize that even getting a lawyer is still the same thing. But so I said, I'm going to go out here and spend some good money, get myself a lawyer. So I went back, didn't have a lawyer because I didn't get the money. And gave me a continuance, and he said, come back ready the next time. So I go back the next time. I still don't have a lawyer, but I still didn't want a public defender. I wanted, one more continuance. And I'll never forget when he called the bailiff over, and they put the cuffs on me. And I was just standing there like completely confused, completely thrown off. I had no idea what happened. I was completely blindsided. And I was like, am I being arrested? Before I can even get the sentence out. So they take me in the back or whatever, and I'm like, why am I being arrested? And pretty much they were arresting me based on the fact that they were going to lock me up and give me more time, but they were going to hold me while I was seeking my legal counsel, pretty much forcing me to get a public defender. And I'm like, wait a second. So if I decide to plead to this right now and take the plea that you're giving me, then I get to go home today. So I called the bailiff, and I told the bailiff, I was like, look, go talk to the judge and tell him I'm going to plead today. So he waits until the end of court. Everybody's gone. The whole courtroom's cleared out. And he calls me back in, and I'm just sitting there. It's him, the court clerk, the bailiff, and me, and I think somebody else that was there, another lady that was in there. And, he makes me say under oath, that I haven't been coerced into making the plea, agreement or anything like that. And that's when they let the cuffs off of me and let me go home. And that was a rude awakening to me of how swift and powerful, the system can really operate against you just with a few words, and how fast you can be locked up and placed into a position where you're not in an advantageous position. And there's so many Americans that go through that, and that's just a minor example. I mean, that was for something small. I ended up paying the fine, and it was pretty much said and done with. But in larger cases, you see this happening to people who are facing, literally prison time. Whether it be state or federal, and they are placed in the worst circumstances where they get these public defenders that are wrapped in the system, and they're all, nobody is working in their favor, and a lot of these guys and girls may not even have a high education level, let alone an understanding of what's happening in the world of law.
Well, yeah, and all they have to do is just to give the appearance of justice, right? It's not even about
Yeah,
justice. I mean,
that's
if you
true.
believe that justice hasn't been served, then the process should go to where you believe that justice has been served. And so they just do enough to give the appearance that some sort of justice. But the more you look at it, you find out that there really isn't any at all. And again, I emphasize the fact that the cards are stacked against you from the very outset, which is wrong. And then, like what you stated too, then they either hold you, and how you can't. I mean, it's just like the guys that are in prison right now. You cannot properly defend yourself or research your case and present what is true when you're locked up in their prison.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that totally goes against. They basically saying you're guilty, and then
exactly.
Otherwise, they would allow you to be out to actually to defend yourself.
Exactly.
But that's to show that what these courts are operating under is admiralty jurisdiction. And I was just doing a little bit of some extra research prior to getting on this interview with you, and I ran across just looking at some things. Just the Reconstruction Act. A lot of things like what were they reconstructing? Then I found out the actual the long name for this act was an act to provide a more efficient government of the rebel states. So it's always been about control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I read that, I went, wait a minute. So they were looking for a more efficient government, a way to provide a more efficient government because of the rebel states.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 1867.
Simplify the control. That's what they're doing, just simplifying and condensing the control. I believe that's what this whole agenda has always been about, when you look at it and how powerful they've gotten. They've managed to simplify it in the eye of the public, pretty much like I said, these courts are like they're like debt mills now. People are just going in, going out, going in, going out. So they've simplified in the aspect where they can pack a courtroom any given day of the week with 200 to 300 people that are all paying a couple $100 to a couple $1,000, and so it's a simple process for them. They go in there, they raise their hand, they plead, they walk out, they pay the lady on the way of walking out, and they go on with their lives. So they've simplified the process for them. But what they've managed to do in doing that is they've made it, they've boxed everyone out, and they've created this system of control. And I believe that's why I said I believe your argument is so interesting, because you're coming from the angle of where do they get this authority from? And when I heard Diane say what she said regarding that they were pretty much a self-governing body, it sent chills through me. It really did. And it let me know that you were meant to be there at that moment in time to ask those questions, because that was what needed to be said at that time. Like, it was just so natural the way the whole thing progressed, and the way you walked in, talked to the receptionist, got invited right back, talked to her, and went right into it, and how that came out of it within a few minutes. And it was just, it was shocking to me. It really was shocking, but it goes to show that they've created this system where all of them, they're all okay. They all have the tax dollars. They all have the money from the public because so many people are paying the fees. They have the fine money. They all have these great pensions, all of this great stuff. Where we're not on the inside of that club, the establishment group, if you will. And we're on the outside, and we don't even understand the things that they are trying to implement on us. We just walk into their buildings, we pay our fines, and we walk back out, and we try to be good little boys and girls. And I don't think that's the way it was ever supposed to be, because literally, if you look at some communities, they are getting torn apart by the court system and the over policing and everything being criminalized, and it feels like they've created their own little cabal of control control over these cities, and there's nothing that anybody could really do. The federal government's not going to step in because of course they approve of it. And it's like, kind of, how do you fix this? How do you change this? You can't even hire a lawyer to change it. And then again, why would you want to?
Yeah, or why would they want to, actually? Because that's, this is like the bread and butter. This is so easy for them. And it's, it's like, in some of my research, they made reference to the court as being a bank for the foreign entities, and that these attorneys are actually foreign, and with the way that they're operating. Then you look at what
that's pretty
with
scary.
Lincoln, and the possible reason for his assassination was trying to turn things around, because he implemented something he probably realized that he shouldn't have done, especially with regard to some of his executive orders.
Yeah.
The one in particular that comes to mind is this General Orders 100, whereby through that alone, which is actually called the Lieber Code as well, and that was in 1863, that the laws of war and international law was actually brought onto American soil. Then you think of his first one was with regards to the state of emergency. That was the first executive order, and that hasn't changed at all. Then Roosevelt continued it. Then you got Truman, Nixon, Clinton. There's a war on drugs, war on poverty, war on just about everything there is out there. And unbeknownst to most of us, it's how they've kept this. Okay. So, yeah, that's how they've kept this whole charade, this whole, and actually it's a sham proceeding if you think about it.
It's funny that
to rob people.
It's funny that there's never been a war on war.
Yeah. We should just start saying no more war, and make that be domestic and foreign.
Mm-hmm. I agree, brother. Well, it sounds like you got a little bit going on there in the background. You gotta get going.
Well, in a bit, yeah. My wife just came in too. She's just getting in from work.
All right.
She was listening to her. So sorry about that.
Oh no,
folks.
You're good, brother. You're good. We all have family life, and we all have things going on. I'm actually moving around while I'm interviewing you right now. I actually made some homemade turkey meatballs here, and I'm about, when I get off this show with you, I just took those out the oven, so that's about to go down and happen. But yeah, brother, your information that you have regarding this the Bar Association, like I said, earlier, it's going to be edited into this interview. I apologize to everybody listening that we couldn't get it in this interview. We have no idea why it's not coming through. I checked my email. I still don't have the email.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I sent it twice, and it came up on mine showing that it was sent. So maybe did you check? Do you think it might have gone to your spam or something? Or
no, it's not in there either. It's
not in there either. Oh, wow, that's weird.
Hasn't come through on that.
And I'll try to figure out another way to get that to you as well as best I can.
Well, I have another way.
My wife, she's my person. She may have some idea.
Okay.
I'll have to ask her.
Well, when we get offline, I'll help you out with it, because there's another way that we can do it as well, and I'll definitely get it from you. But Yeah, man, we'll go ahead and get that interview in here because it was definitely a great 12 and a half minute interview. So we want the listeners to be able to hear that, and we're going to get it in here. Hey, do you have any other interviews that you're planning on that are coming up soon that we have to look out for, or that are going to be interesting? I'm sure all your interviews are interesting, but something that, especially along these lines of like the Bar Association, I think that's something a lot of people are extremely interested in this current climate that we're in and what's happening with the government in the world right now.
Sure. Right off the top, I would actually say that I'm definitely looking at getting further clarification. Now, Diane was the executive director, so if there's someone that she has to report to, maybe that's, and I grabbed some of the business cards when I was down there, right? So here it is, they say they're not in business, and it's but they've got business cards there, and she couldn't show me a license, and it's just really interesting. And I'm looking.
She couldn't show you a license, but she had a business card.
Yeah, one of the business cards is the controller. She's there. Then there's another. What's this one here?
That is very
that's
funny.
Her executive director. Then you've got a development and law-related education director. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very much like a business. It sounds very much like that wonderful place they call the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, it does.
Isn't that very interesting how those similarities are popping up?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with government.
Self-governing. It sounds something like what's that guy's name? That really old guy. I can't remember his name. Is Green something? I forget. The guy that used to oversee the Federal Reserve. But when he went before the board and, they were asking him pretty much who they answer to, he said, we don't answer anybody. The governor
yeah, well, there was somebody that was actually in Congress. Was it Lindbergh or one of those guys, too, that spoke about all of that as well.
Yeah, these people literally, this is what they're getting away with. And that's why I try to tell people and warn people of the danger that is on the horizon right now. And we're seeing what we're seeing is the meshing of organizations, corporations, and government. Now, we've already seen that once, with that model already exists, and it exists through our Federal Reserve in so many ways. There's great information out there on YouTube about the Federal Reserve. Just look it up. It is more than enough information out there about it. But when you talk about the bar, it's pretty much the mold of it is the same way, and that's why the interview was so crucial. I'll have an article up as well for you, brother. I'll do an article on it on Corporate Media and include the interview that way, so people could just get the interview separate from this interview as well. So it'll be 2 copies of it, but people have to hear the words of this executive director at the bar saying that they're a self-governing entity. That is just, it amazes me that she would even just say it so clearly, and it would just fall from her lips as though that is something that's normal and constitutional.
Yeah, which it isn't. Here's something too that I ran across, and it's actually the 81st Congress, second session, or 2D session. It says there was a report on the National Lawyers Guild, the legal bulwark of the Communist Party. And this took place years ago when they had this, it was a committee on un-American activities. Mm-hmm. And I just sort of started looking through this, and it's rather interesting just with some of the things that they're talking about, because
committee on un-American activities?
Yeah, it actually states, report I'm looking at says, is prepared and released by the Committee on Un-American Activities, the U.S. House of Representatives, Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
And it's with regards to the National Lawyers Guild, and is the foremost legal bulwark of the Communist Party. its front organizations, and controlled unions. So, and I'm still reading through this, so I don't really want to comment too much on it because I'm just getting into it here.
I'm actually writing it down so I could check it out later.
It doesn't look very good, I'll tell you what.
It doesn't look very good. Well, I can tell you this. What's so interesting, and let me go a little bit deeper into why it's intriguing what you're talking about. You have to think about all the new departments that have been developed over time, the Department of Homeland Security, and other elements. We'll just use that as being the biggest one, but other elements that have been developed under that, especially this information technology stuff that's starting to expand throughout the federal government. But you think about these entities that are being developed, and their main role is to develop terrorist-related responses to situations and to monitor that activity on a daily basis. Now, when we talk about terrorism, and we talk about those organizations, they follow what would be known as the law. So here we go with the law again. And they are giving special privileges and powers that enable them due to the laws. And it's a scary scenario when you have the bar, which is stating that it's a self-governing entity, and working in cooperation with the state and granting powers, to these organizations and these groups, and even in some situations contractors. And we have the federal government complying with that. So it becomes a very scary situation where you see that it opens your eyes a little bit more to understand that America is a corporation itself. That's all we are, is a corporation. And each one of us that, hold a birth certificate are truly beholden to a bank somewhere. And it's a very scary scenario when you really put the whole total aspect, into view. And it makes you wonder, how do you ever really get out of this situation? Because these entities, self-governing entities, it doesn't stop with just the Federal Reserve and the bar. There's other ones that are out there as well. You got to get into some of the different sectors. And, it really makes you wonder, one, how do you stop it? And two, how did it get this far?
Well, yeah, and it's actually at the local level too. I mean, when you look at, and they're working a lot of this actually through the non-for-profits as well, where they have their friends or family, start up these, and they're laundering money. That's what it comes down to as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just keep it real here.
Yeah, when we look at the Clintons,
that people want to ignore.
We look at the Clintons. I mean, they are the most famous for that. The Clinton Foundation. I mean, they're nothing but, I have to say it, gangsters. That's really what they are. And the whole Oregon situation, I said it a few times, and I think maybe once or twice on air, but I have some stuff on my YouTube about it. But even in the Oregon situation, when you talk about that land that's in dispute and stuff like that, well, it's funny that the Clintons, through their foundation, were able to sell, what was it, I believe, $2 billion or something like that worth of land, worth of uranium resources to some Russian guys. It is just amazing how they're able to funnel this money to sell literally the land from underneath the people, and they keep it under the concept of their organization, and they even make it go through different places. Like this transaction happened through Canada, and it was under the Clinton Foundation. So we see this perversion of government privileges and these organizations / foundations, and how they use that to subvert tax laws and to launder money.
Absolutely. I mean, it's
launder money and still resources. Launder money, still resources. I mean, you name it, they're doing it, and they're doing it all, under the pretense that it's legal.
Well, and I guess in a sense, again, we look at the words there. And it may be legal because they've kind of organized it and within their realm. But one of the things that comes to mind when I think with regards to some of the words that used with regards to legal and lawful, there is a difference when you do the word study.
Okay.
Law is of God. Law is of God. Legal isn't. It's not of God when you do the word study. And
really? Say that again now. Law is of God and legal is not.
Yeah. And I've also related it to like legislative, right? Legal, legislative, which for the most part, they write these things. Because what's legal, what may be legal is not always lawful, but what's lawful is always legal. And that's what we're finding out through some of our research and actually in just addressing some of this when we're in court.
Let me ask you this: where do you stand then on the? Where do you stand? That's a very interesting position. So where do you stand on the fact of rights versus laws?
Okay, say that again.
Where do you stand on the issue of rights versus laws? I've always just give you idea. I've always and what I say to people and what I see and know to be true is the reason why we have our Constitution is because of our God-given unalienable rights, and the reason why the government uses law is to pretty much subvert those God-given rights. And to me, they always try to make the law seem like the godly thing because it's in accordance with our rights, when literally the law is the perverted version of what they wish our rights were. If you see what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but now when you talk law, though, so which law, though? Because you're talking... I look at that as being what they refer to as law is really the color of law. It may appear to be that, but it's not. And I believe even the FBI on their website, it talks about prosecuting color of law charges, right? And again, that's where they've used that to violate one's rights. So from that aspect, it is about rights. And the law, according to the rules of common law. So when they speak of law, they're talking something completely different.
Okay,
but
so I see, yeah.
It's just like when they call out our name, and this may be sort of traveling down the rabbit hole a little bit, but it's like when they call out your name, right? The name that they use all the time in the courts is your name spelled in all the caps, and I don't write my name that way. The name that I'm called by, it's proper spelling. It's not in all capital letters. And there's a purpose for that. So it sounds like it may be the person they're calling out, but it really isn't. And just to confirm that, in their world, when the Secretary of State office, I just had my two birth certificates, the apostille on them. One was the government version that they created with my name in all caps, capitalized, and the other one was the proper one with my name spelled properly, that as my parents had. That I saw the original certificate of live birth. So there is something to that. And I don't know if I sort of answered your question with regards to rights and law, but yeah, rights would take precedence of that, but it's still based off of the law.
So in your mind, maybe this is traveling a little bit further too. What do you think came first? Do you think it was rights or laws?
Well, we said it was written, right? It was written, right? The Ten Commandments, from that aspect, but if we were born with them, then rights would take precedent.
So
Something that we're born, not written.
So that's kind of where I'm leading to, in a way, that the only thing that the government, and this goes back to the copyright issue, the only thing that they really have ownership of, and is laws. They own the if you, just in a broad context, they own the legal system. So
Yes.
with that being said, this is a a theory and something I've been working on, and we don't have to get deep into it right now. With that being said, the party that I see the most upholding constitutional values is easily the right side, the Republicans, and I don't see the left talking about the Constitution nearly as much. Okay. With that being said, I think it's very funny what we're seeing happen into the Republican Party right now, because it's interesting to me, because I don't think many Republicans realize the importance of their party. They are literally the balance of the system, if you will. And it's necessary to have the Republican Party, because it's necessary to have somebody who will always fight for the constitutional values. You see what I'm saying? Now,
Right, sure.
with that being said, and watching what's going on right now, it has the potential to, either A, destroy the Republican Party, or B, put the Republican Party in such disrepair that, it'll be a decade before they're operational again. And to me, at this current climate that we're at right now, and, with the whole Supreme Court nomination thing, where we are with all the liberal policies, everything. Even though I'm a Bernie supporter, I can speak openly because I myself am an independent. When I look at where we are in history and time, it's a very scary situation moving forward. It makes me wonder if we're heading somewhere where it's really going to be in a dictator kind of fashion, where one party itself is going to be dictating the outcomes, and it will be so heavy left that it's not really one person per se, like the president won't be a dictator, but the whole party itself. And that opens up a door to pass laws, procedures, and to follow these new global laws and guidelines that has never been seen before. And I believe that we're literally watching an overthrow of a party, and people don't see it happening. We're watching rights, constitutional rights, be attacked because they have to die and go away so that people could pay more attention to laws. And if they pay attention to laws, well, we know who owns that system. We know who can manipulate that system, because you're born with rights, but laws they can change any time. They can't change your rights. But if they can take your rights away, or if they can destroy the party that defends the rights the most, then they are on the winning side of the battle. And when it comes to overthrowing that Constitution or changing that Constitution, they'll win it relatively easy, because they've overthrown the group that would protect it the most. That's my theory.
Yeah, and I can agree with you to an extent there with that. I don't know if I think both sides. I mean, it's always been kind of set where it's supposed to be the two-party thing, and all through history, the wars have been financed on both sides.
Absolutely.
And I see this being no different, in the political arena, that those that want to have, and, be it the globalists, the cabal.
That's right.
They want that control, and so they've always managed to play both sides.
Yeah, they play them very well too.
And
very
I think we're looking at that quite a bit now too.
I just wrote a report on that. Did you get a chance to catch that?
No, I didn't.
I'll share it out with you, and it's talking about how that's exactly what Soros is doing with Clinton and Trump right now, and he's he's in both of their pockets. He's helped Trump. He's bailed Trump out in Chicago. He's did it in New York for Trump. Been there for Clinton for a while. Trump has spent Christmas Eve with Soros and family. So we're watching really these globalist elite, these millionaires and the ultra rich position themselves within the legal system now to such a way that I think we're literally watching the takeover right now in real time.
Yeah, I believe you're right, because there's just so much going on with how this has come about, and the whole political narrative has changed. It's not the old just the peaches and cream campaign that it normally is, right? Yeah. Through the years, it's gotten.
Who's talking about the Constitution?
Yeah, well, nobody's really talking about it, are they? I haven't really, to be honest with you, I've not even really been following the campaign much.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're right. You're right. Nobody.
And that should be an issue. I had a friend, an old cattle guy, friend of mine out here where I live, that has been at this for some 25, 30 years, and he was basically passing me the torch to continue the fight. I was speaking with him earlier today. He said he's just done because his attitude is until, and I believe he's right, until someone steps up and addresses the issue. And this is probably one of the biggest, what they call patriot mythology things ever. But until someone addresses the fact of the gold fringe flag at that level, because it is what it is. We are under a state of emergency, have been since 1933. The fact that there's not even a proper Congress, because what is it? It was 1860 something, where Congress, when the South walked out. So there hasn't been a proper Congress since that time. And then when you look at the Mann report, and it shows that Congress is private, along with the Senate. So there's some issues there that.
Hey, brother, I want to do this, if you don't mind, because I like how you get engaged with that information. I'd like to set up another show and have you come back sometime here soon and be able to compile all your information together. I know this is kind of a quick interview because you had just done that interview the other day, so we just decided, hey, let's get this out on air and start talking about it. But and do an article and get it out there to the public and show them what's going on. But what I would like you to do is, because I want to work with you and keep working with you, I enjoy your conversation and your ideas and how you think and your depth of research, and your honesty and clarity on it. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can compile some information together and just give us kind of a walkthrough of history, letting us know kind of how we got to this point. And where we are right now. And if you can give us a Lee Arthur Rice breakdown of that in a special segment, I'd be more than grateful.
Well, and it wouldn't just be me, because right now, and it's amazing that you're mentioning that, because that's the very thing that we've out here have been looking and struggling with for a while. My friend Tom Munns, who's also the area manager for JBS, has been asking that for a long time, because he's getting around and he's, talking with the sheriffs, talking with the police, talking to a lot of people, some of the representatives in that as he travels. And that's one of the things that we're actually looking at doing, is putting together a really, I don't want to say in-depth, but the timeline. I think if we look at the timeline, as from what happened, and we look at all of the things that are within that timeline, I think would give us a really clear picture. So that is something that we're actually working on at the moment, to try to put something together like that.
Love to be when you guys get that done, I'd love to have the privilege of bringing all you guys on. We get a group of you on at one time. It's not a problem. But you have all you guys on, and we can all sit down and discuss that information and do a review of that, and actually a great article on it, because that's something that I believe people need to understand. If you're going to understand law, and if you're going to understand the system that you live in and what these people use, then you have to understand where it came from, where it derived from, and how to utilize it to your benefit. There's so many of us that could do so much more, but we're rendered powerless because of our ignorance. And I believe the time for that has to literally stop now. It does, because we're at a precipice. We're at a point in history where there may not be any turning back after this year, just to be honest with you. And
I totally agree with you. That's the feeling I'm getting. Just even in my, just down to my bones here.
Yeah.
With regards to what's going on. What's taking place. Let alone just what I experienced myself. And so I can relate to the guys that are in prison and being away from the family, but how we got there, and partly we could say that we are to blame. We just become too lackadaisical, for lack of a better term. But we just look at things when it's election time, and then the rest of the 365, or I guess that the election day is the only day that's important, and then the rest of the 364 days, everybody's just off on walkabout somewhere,
living a capitalist life,
and just letting them do whatever, And I think that's where the removal of civics, and I think we spoke about this before. The fact that they removed civics and put in American government says a lot right there too, through the educational system.
Yeah, it's a really big problem. I mean, we're talking about people that really don't understand. Listen, when I look at what's going on in the school system right now, and it's great that your friend is going around and talking to, sheriffs and officials and stuff like that. But when I look around at the school system right now, and that was one of the arguments that I had, one of the schools around here, a couple cities over, just implemented police officers in their school, and they're like in 5th grade. And I'm like, what is the purpose? What's the purpose of this? What's going on? Not only do the people not understand law and understand what's, legal, what's not, the color of law, they don't understand any of that stuff. Now the children are being brought up and cultivated into a society of obedience and obedience and authority to power. And a lot of times we're seeing that power is really it's not distributed correctly, if you will. And excuse that thunder in the background. We have a bad storm going on here. But
oh wow,
yeah, that the power is not being distributed correctly, and they're not utilizing their power correctly, I should say, or in a lawful manner, and they're just acting roguely. But when you have a people that don't understand what their rights are, they don't. Not only do they not understand what the law is, but they don't understand what their rights are. We are at a dangerous crossroad. This is the open door for for a dictatorship, since I can't say the word right now, for a dictatorship to walk in the door and to literally say, hey, we're going to go ahead and take over right now because you guys don't know what's good for you anyway, and we do, and we can provide you security, and we'll monitor you while we do it.
Yeah, you hit that right on point with that.
Scary,
that
man.
Comment, because for lack of knowledge, right?
yeah, it's true. I think we're starting to see a lot of people perish because of that. We're seeing a lot of groups out here that are disgruntled. A lot of people are like looking for a way now, and I see a lot of people that are just groveling in the corner. Just to be honest with you, because these movements have been beat up over the last 8 years. man, we have seen movements rise up in the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions, and die out just as quick. And it has been one ride after another, one ride after another. And, what we haven't maintained the focus on is, any real change that we can make towards this legal system. And I believe your step, in talking about the Bar Association and how they pretty much have a monopoly over, who gets to practice law and who gets to represent that and how they get to do it and the licenses and just pretty much how everything is inclusive around that, down to, the officers, the court officers and everything else. That's really big conversation right now and really bold conversation in today's climate, because people need more of the truth of the reality that every one of us is living in.
Absolutely. And I've always felt that was, not just because I've had to deal with it personally, but just watching others as well. And actually, going into the courts and just seeing what's done, and it's just, it's bad. Lives are destroyed. And that is one of the ways that, families are just, are torn apart. And, the courts are taking, taking one's, the children, so there's all of these things happen through that system. And it does affect a lot of people. And some say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why would you worry about the whole court thing? Well, you don't have to be doing anything wrong.
That's the point.
And as a matter of fact, nobody has done anything wrong. There's never been, in most of these cases, I'd say, there's never an injured party. There's never no harm done to any property.
That's right.
But yet and still, they want to say that it's criminal. And so if they're saying it's criminal, the only thing I can come back to is that they're operating under this state of emergency, which we've been under since the 1800s, into the 1900s.
Yeah, it's
and
absolutely.
It is all controlled through the bar.
Well, okay, I have a question for you then. And maybe not to go too far and not take up too much of your time. I know you got to go. What is it, now knowing what we've talked about tonight and your stance and position on in your recent interview, you just did that great interview on these on the Bar Association, if you will. What is your stance then? Because we talked about the Bar Association being a self-governing authority. We talked about the Federal Reserve being kind of the same, actually being the same thing. What is your position of where does the private prison system fall into that category now when we're talking about the rogue nature of everything that's going on right now? How do you feel about that?
They're a part of the process. I mean, that's, again, that control, they're saying it's privatized, but, what isn't? You've got the government and business in bed together anyway, so that's only just the same. They've got a contract with these wrongdoers to continue doing what they're doing.
To continue doing wrong.
To continue doing the very thing that they're doing and wrongfully prosecuting people, and then having a place for them not being these private prisons. And it's following the money again. We're looking at why are there so many people incarcerated? If you look at those who are just out and about in the free world, so to speak, if you look at it from a financial standpoint, there's collateral, right? You have the people that are walking about freely, that aren't behind bars at just straight collateral, or they say chattel or cattle or whatever. But then you've got those that are in prison, incarcerated, right? And so when you think in terms of financial dealings, then you've got secured collateral right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how that all works and how they actually make money from all of that, but they do. and the
Absolutely.
private prisons have capitalized on that aspect of it.
Oh yeah, well, we'll save that for another show that goes into
Yeah.
convict leasing, and convict leasing happened right after slavery was abolished, and the slave, was told, "Go ahead, you can leave now." And as soon as they walked into the street, and the police officer was, for lack of, just giving you a visual, the police officer was waiting for him right there and said, "Oh, what are you doing in the middle of the street? You don't have a job? You're arrested." Then the slave
Yeah.
owner he went back down to the jail and said, "Hey, I want to rent that slave right there," and it was the same slave that was on his plantation. So, it, we've seen this corruption before. This corruption has happened in America before. It happened right after slavery, and convict leasing was a real thing. And now we're seeing a probation system that is one of the largest. It is the largest probation system in the world, and it's, to me, it's very reminiscent of convict leasing. And then we have the prisoners that are working in the private prisons now, and what are they doing? They're making products. Thousands of inmates making products for corporations, pretty much taking
Yeah.
the jobs from Americans, and these corporations are using this prison system to go ahead and sell products to America. And this is it's so perverted, and we can get deep into it, but we thank you for what you've given us tonight, the information that you've had there from going to the Idaho State Bar and talking with Diane, and getting that bombshell information. Again, I will include that into this interview here at the beginning, that it'll be there for the people that are listening to this live right now. And if you want to catch the archive, I'll have the interview in there. It'll be in the article as well. We thank you for that, Arthur. Is there anything that you wanted to add to the conversation before we go ahead and let you go?
No, I would just say that, it's really up to each and every one of us, and I know that it's difficult. We all have our own personal issues, family matters, things like that we have to deal with. But, if we don't make the decision to really try to do something, even if it's calling and trying to hold some of these people accountable, we need to remind them that they are public servants. And for them to be acting the way they're acting, it's wrong on their part, and I think, unless they just don't have a soul or heart at all, to even reach these folks. But they live in our communities, right? So there is that side. I mentioned to a friend today, because she had called to talk to, I think it was where some of the political prisoners are staying in Nevada, and so they were making phone calls, and so she said she'd called the jail there, and the person was very unpleasant with her, and she was wanting to know, and she felt bad and wanted to know if there was any terminology she should use with regards to dealing with that situation. And I said, well, you just need to, you need to remind them of who they are, who you are as one of the people, and that they are public servants, and then carry forward from there. And I think that we just have to have a much stronger and positive viewpoint and stance in dealing with these guys, because they're so used to just having their way that it does, when you do stand up, I think it does create a situation whereby it makes them think too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're forcing it. You're projecting your energy, if you will, onto the people that should already be resonating with you anyway. But they seem to forgotten, and they're starting to act like they all work for a corporation, which is kind of what they do work for, but it's not how we expect them to act, because of the way that we view how the circumstances and situations should be here in America. And I get exactly what you're saying. We do have to collectively remind them that, listen, you're here to serve us, to serve the people. That's why we've elected you to these positions. That's why you've been hired for certain positions, to do a job to serve the people. And so many of them have forgotten that.
Absolutely.
All right, Lee. So, with that being said, is there any information that you'd like people to be able to, find you at, your Facebook or any websites or groups or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I would just say just to my Facebook page, the American Common Law Academy, that's still out there. So please continue to share that. I share all the information that's out there
Absolutely.
that I'm posting. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. And the American Common Law Academy, that's on Facebook?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page. I haven't set up an actual website yet. My IT skills are somewhat limited.
That's all right.
I haven't gotten there, but there is a Facebook page. There's also the People of Idaho. I would say to look at that cover photo there, because I'm sure every single state has that as their organizational chart, and basically it has the people at the top. And to me, I think just seeing that visual, it's not something I made up. It's actually out of the Blue Book, the Idaho State Blue Book. I just got Oregon's in as well, so I haven't found that same sort of organizational chart in there, but every state would be set up the same because it is the people. We just have to recognize that power and start acting accordingly.
Yeah, I heard that. Good information there, brother. Great information. Well, with that being said, thank you, Arthur, for coming on the show. Everybody, listen, I'm going to make sure that we have a link to, beneath this YouTube when it's done, there's going to be a link for Lee Arthur Rice. And you make sure you go to his page, send him a friend request, or also go to the American Common Law Academy, even more important, so that you can share the information that's on there. We're going to make sure we include those links in the YouTube section there for you, so you don't have to worry about that at all. But with that being said, listen, brother, we'll be awaiting for the next time that you actually, do a follow-up on that interview. Just, keep me posted with that, and I'll definitely be interested in getting that out. I know the audience will definitely be interested in hearing that interview. The next time we will actually be able to physically play the interview live on air. So we'll make sure that happens the next time too as well, so that people can hear it as soon as we're doing it. But again, stellar information. Thank you, and you make sure you have yourself a good night.
Appreciate all that you're doing, and I continue to share your information as well. I think you're doing, you've got a voice, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be on to interview with you, and just to share information and to educate the people here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
you're always welcome here, and no problem. Thank you. You're always welcome here, man. We look at the All Rights Matter show. All I know is, if they tell me Lee Arthur is ready to go on air, then he's going on air, because I know it's always going to be a great conversation and some great information and a fresh perspective on how to look at things. And that's what I look forward to, is people that are forward thinkers, conversations we can look back in 5 years and say, wow, that guy had it right, and I believe that you're one of those people. So you keep that up. You keep doing a great job. And with that being said, we'll stay in contact with you. And as always, you have yourself a good night.
Okay, and you too.
All right, guys and girls out there, thank you for listening.
Be blessed.
Definitely, brother. Thank you for listening, everybody out there. And you guys have a good night as well. Everybody stay alert, stay alive.
Absolutely.